I'd like to introduce you to Susanne Hollmann, who's the Deputy Head of Unit for Culture and Creativity at the DG Education and Culture at the European Commission. So I'm really grateful that Susanne could make it today because together with her teams at the European Commission and with some MEPs from this current parliamentary term, she has been working towards the creation of a tailor-made policy for the music sector at European level that could materialize in the future years. So now I would like to welcome Susanne.
Thank you, Elise, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the nice introduction. Thank you for having me here. And thank you to Liveurope and to the Ancien Belgique for this event. We think it's a very timely moment to organize the event. As you said, it's the 5th edition of the New Stories for Europe, and it shows the importance of culture and music for Europe. And you will discuss many of this, maybe also questions that go beyond that, namely about the identity as Europeans. But we will see that maybe later in these panels. This year, the discussion on the future of Europe becomes even more important. You mentioned it, we will have the European elections, but it's also very important because we have very, very, very big challenges. We have Brexit looming, we see growing populist forces in various member states, and this of course can and will have an impact also on cultural policies in the member states, and finally for Europe as a whole. However, you and everybody who might listening and following us, I understand is this live stream, is this correct? Yeah. You have of course the opportunity to vote for a strong European Parliament in the upcoming European Parliament elections, a European Parliament that is in favor of the cultural policy that you want for Europe. The outcome of the elections will also have a strong influence of who will become the next president of the European Commission. Yes, according to the treaties, the European treaties, the main competence for cultural policies lies, of course, with the European member states. The EU's role is limited. It is limited to complementing and supporting the actions of the member states. What does it mean? It means that the EU can enhance the cooperation between the member states through dedicated funding, for instance. We foster mutual learning through the exchange of best practices and information. And here I think I can proudly say we've been doing that quite successfully in the field of culture. Some of the European networks and platforms, for instance, in the music sector would simply not work the same way without the EU as a facilitator. And again, Liveurope is a very good example here, but not the only one. And in this regard, we should also recognize that the outgoing European Parliament has always been extremely supportive to provide the money, the budget for the existing EU funding program that you all know, the funding program for culture, which is Creative Europe. Creative Europe is the program, the only EU program so far specifically focused on promoting creativity, culture and diversity in Europe. It contributes to promoting the competitiveness and the innovative nature of what we know as are the cultural and creative sectors in Europe. It helps the cultural and creative industry to seize the opportunities of the digital age and of globalization. We are, as you know, in a phase where negotiations are ongoing at the EU level between the EU institutions on the next Creative Europe program as from 2021. And here again, the European Parliament has a very, very important role. And it's been the European Parliament that is fighting for an increase of the budget, which we in the European Commission, we who are in charge of culture, we actually like quite a lot. One of the big novelties, as you also know in the program, is the sector-specific funding for music. And to explore ideas for such a new funding stream as from 2021, the European Parliament secured in 2018 and in 2019 additional funding for music. Funding under the so-called preparatory action Music Moves Europe. With this money, to be precise, we received 1.5 million in 2018 and 3 million in 2019. We as Commission are launching calls. And we were inter alia able to fund important projects. For instance, we launched a study. We are currently working on a study to prepare a European music export strategy. We also support different support schemes, for instance, a new training scheme to enhance the professionalization of young music professionals. We also test innovative models, for instance, concerning online distribution, thereby contributing to the better cross-border circulation of European music. Further calls for proposal will be launched, first of all, before the summer this year, and will have a second round in the second half of this year. On the regulatory side, as you all know, important progress was finally made with the new copyright directive, with the adoption just a few weeks from now. And it has shown again the paramount role of the European Parliament. So you see there are really important reasons for your sector to participate at the upcoming European elections. In order to underline in which direction a European policy approach for the music sector could go, let me take the opportunity to present very briefly the main streams of Music Moves Europe. You know best, the music ecosystem has radically changed in the era of digitization. It is in constant adaptation regarding the way music is created, produced, distributed and monetized. And consumed, of course. Europe continues to be a strong global player all along the music value chain, and studies tell us that music consumption is on the rise across Europe. They also tell us the European music industry revenues are growing and that this is a trend that will continue. At the same time, challenges persist along the value chain, challenges that threaten the European music sector's main assets, which are creativity, diversity and competitiveness. And it's here where Music Moves Europe comes in. Music Moves Europe started actually here in Ancienne Belgique in late 2015. And together with sector representatives, we've been meeting, we've been discussing, and we've been trying to identify ways how to best tackle these challenges, including through EU support. And Music Moves Europe has since become the EU framework for initiatives and actions to promote the diversity and the competitiveness of the European music sector in a very coherent way. What we have and what we see in Music Moves Europe is actually 4 streams of action. First of all, Music Moves Europe is about EU policy, bringing together the member states at council level. They will start their work this year in June with a conference on music that will be organized by the Romanian presidency in June in Bucharest. Such a cooperation, I personally think, could, for instance, address issues like support for music export, or questions relating to taxation, or questions relating to social security issues. Music Moves Europe is also about EU legislation. We mentioned the new copyright directive, but possibly also other legislative proposals, for instance, that have an impact on the music sector, for instance, visa regulation. Music Moves Europe, and this is the third stream, is about EU funding. We mentioned Creative Europe. Currently, Creative Europe is supporting about 80 projects, cooperation projects, 50 networks like LiveDMA or the European Music Council, and 9 platforms like Liveurope. In addition, the EU also supports under Creative Europe the EU Prize for Music, the Music Moves Europe Talent Awards, that celebrates emerging European music talents, helping them to develop their international careers. EU funding also helps the creative industries to have easier access to bank loans via a guarantee facility. Last but least, but very importantly, Music Moves Europe is about continuing the dialogue with the music sector. The next new series of dialogues will start in 10 days from now, on the 21st of May in Ancienne Belgique. It will bring together over 100 stakeholders, to discuss topics like funding for music, copyright, the new music media, music creation, and live music. And this meeting, again, it will take place here in Belgique. You see, we like the place a lot. And it's upon invitation only, because what we're trying to do is, when we have a dialogue at the European level, it is very logical that we as European institutions focus on a dialogue with key representative organizations in a European setting. And that's what we are trying to do. We will bring together over 100 stakeholders. And we are looking much forward to it. And following on that launch event on the new structured dialogue Music Moves Europe, we will see a series of smaller scale meetings, and most probably also related to big music events. I'm personally very passionate about Music Moves Europe because it really promotes a holistic policy approach to music. And it is something we not developed only for the music sector, but with the music sector. And now I know you don't want to continue listening to me probably, but you're very impatient to listen to 3 panels which address 3 very different, however very complementary and very important issues. Thank you for that.
Hello. My name is Audrey Guerre. I'm very glad to be here with you today. We're going to start this session. I guess I can't see, but I think we can. Okay, let's go. So we will start with this panel. Music venues as hubs for new European talent. As I just said, my name is Audrey Guerre. I work for LiveDMA. It's a European network. It's a non-profit organization representing over 3,000 music venues, clubs and festivals in Europe. LiveDMA is an umbrella organization, which means that our members are national associations representing live music venues, clubs and festivals, such as Court Circuit for Belgium, Wallonie, where the team is here, if you want to discuss with them after this panel. So the goal of our network is really to create some exchange opportunities, to create some knowledge, some resource about the live music sector, and also to represent these venues, clubs and festivals with one voice at the European level. Few weeks ago, we released a campaign, Support Your Local Music Scene, with a report on what artists say. Actually, I think that the artists are the best witnesses when it comes to highlight the role of the music venues and clubs in their careers. We can show the next slides, for instance. So we collected statements where artists affirm, they say how the local music scene matter for them as artists, but also for the audiences or for the local communities. The examples that you can see here are only the examples from Belgium. So the venues and the clubs are really the sector's foundation when it comes to develop new talents. On one hand, there's many famous artists that probably started their career in your local music scene. And now the economic value that they create, that they produce once famous, benefit bigger players and is not re-injected in these local music scenes where they started their career. On the other hand, venues and clubs also program a diversity, large diversity of bands, of music genre, of music niche that might never hit the charts. But this diversity, the goal is also that they make it accessible for all the music lovers. So when touring in Europe, touring in Europe is a great opportunity for the artist. It's an opportunity to develop their career, to make a living out of their job, and it's also a way to connect all the music lovers around Europe. Liveurope especially, so you can show the next slide, yeah, again. So you can find the campaign on our website if you're interested in. So Liveurope, for instance, was born out of this challenge, how to boost the career of emerging European artists. And 4 years after the start of the project, this support scheme allowed to book 4 times more new European artists in the 14 venues who are part of the network. So what if it could benefit hundreds of venues in Europe and showcase thousands of European artists in our venues? This is the question behind this panel today. And we're here with 4 people to discuss it. Sorry. So we are here with Blu Samu, who's an artist, with Julien Fournier from the export office Wallonie-Bruxelles Musiques, with Olivier de Schutter, who's a candidate to the European election for Belgium, and with Geert van Italie, sorry if I mispronounce you, who's from Melkweg, a music venue in the Netherlands. So we are going to have a discussion for about 30-40 minutes. But if you have questions, you don't have to wait till the end of the panel. Just raise your hand and I will try to keep a look at you so you can also directly ask your question to the speakers with me today. And so to start this panel, my first question will go to you, Blu Samu. Maybe you can introduce yourself and tell us from your own experience, how do the music venue help you to develop your career at the local level?
Okay, so hi everybody, my name is Blu Samu. I'm 24 years old and I've been professionally trying to make music for about 2 years. I think a way that music venues helped me is that when I just came to Brussels, I got to perform here and open for an artist who was already very much bigger than myself. So the Abbé gave me the opportunity to open for IMDDB in December, and that helped a lot because the Abbé is a respected concert hall. Reviews from a good show in that respective concert hall help you a lot locally, but also just over the whole entire Belgium. I mean, I think I got a lot of bookings afterwards thanks to that, and I touched a lot of people who were here in Brussels, and I can say honestly that my main crowd is in Brussels, and it is because I had so many opportunities to perform here, and now I have a really good, solid fan base here, you know. They're really, really nice, and it wouldn't have happened if those rooms wouldn't have given me that opportunity. After I dropped only 1 video clip, they were like, okay, no, you got some good music, we're gonna give you a chance, you know. And it can help you and it cannot help you, but I think for most people who do this and love this, it will help them.
Thank you. Yeah, artists often mention the opening act as very important elements to develop their career on those stages. Geert, maybe you could explain also your work in Melkweg and how can the artist can benefit the best from the venue and from the different activities maybe that you provide?
Well, the example of Blu Samu is of course very important, though it's increasingly difficult for artists to get a support possibility. A lot of support acts are like arranged by the head attraction, the headliner of the night. So, and that usually is not a local act. It's an act that travels with them. So, what we can do besides that is create events, festivals, presentations, showcases, and that's a matter of creating opportunities to present artists for a new audience for them. That's one. We can also by giving them the chance to perform, to help them to get more experienced and more better at performing. So that's the presentation side. What we can do as venues, and that's what we are increasingly doing, although it takes a lot of our time and money, of course, to more like train and coach artists, like really talent development. And that's we have some experience as Melkweg. We have a production house together with another venue, Paradiso, and we have had some experiments in doing it with artists, almost on a tailor-made basis. We ask the artist, "What do you want from us? Is it feedback on performance? Is it management knowledge or marketing experience or production experience?" And we provide them with that. So we help them, and that's what venues didn't used to do a lot. So that's a new facet, and it adds to what we are doing as a presentation possibility.
True. Yeah, we with Live DMA we run a survey every year on the live music venues activities and providing support to develop the artist careers is one of the activity. I think that maybe would need to double check the numbers, but that at least a quarter of the music venues in Europe, they provide some residencies or training supports for the artists to develop their career. So to, as you said, to develop their presentation, their skills on stage, because I guess it's something that you need to learn. It's not something that you know from the very start.
Yeah, and why are we doing this as venues now more than before? I think it also has to do with the fact that the music business is becoming more lean and mean and more do-it-yourself. So like the old-fashioned A&R manager is not there anymore, only with the major artists maybe. So I think there's a role for venues and bookers and programmers of venues to help develop the artists more than it was like 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So that's something that's, I think, my analysis of that. And
so you said it's kind of a recent development for your venue, yeah. These trainings. For how long does it exist now?
Well, the production house we have, it's a Dutch word, productiehuis. It's about making multidisciplinary crossovers between music and like multimedia or theater or dance. And that has to do with developing as an artist besides making music only. And we've been doing that for almost 20 years now. But the specific tailor-made training and development, it's not really training. Training is, I think, my ambition to do more. But it's like giving feedback more. And we've been doing that since a year or 4 or 5. Yeah.
Okay. And how do you develop such business models for this kind of activities? Because it's not an activity where you sell tickets and so on.
No, that's what I started saying. It takes time of our bookers and our marketing managers, etc., to give that feedback and to help artists. What we have to do is find extra funding to do that, and there are possibilities in Holland to get it, mm-hmm. But it's difficult because they are mostly modeled after the practice of the theater trainings and development. So to come up with a new method in training music artists, pop music artists, is sometimes hard to explicate and to say how you're doing it. And so that's all. It's all in like we're just starting. I think. Yeah.
Okay. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I thought maybe you can give like a rad concert at the end. You know, you train like a few artists that you really believe in, and then you make this big ass concert, but you make people pay to see it. Maybe as funding. I don't know.
Yeah, that's possible too. You can, but what we do in Amsterdam, we have something called lidmaatschap, and it's a membership you pay on top of the ticket. And I don't want to talk as much about it as in this, so don't tell anybody. But we use the money to invest into new talent in a way. We can use that money, which is not going to the artists, the headliners, but we use it to promote new bands and new artists. So that's what we're doing in a way. Every concert, every night we sell out. Some of the money is going to the new talent.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not cheating. I think we can say it.
Well, if you put it on the costing and the agent is seeing it like, mm-hmm. Well, where's that money going? put it in there.
I see. So this start in this nut treating moment at the very local area, and then, as I said in the introduction, also the fact of going on the road and going to other countries, hitting the road and make your own music circulate is also maybe a second step. But I feel like this second step arrives more and more earlier in the artist's career, and it's actually not now accomplished artists who are doing European tours, but more and more European artists are on the road because this is where they develop their career. So for you, why do you think it's very important, those touring opportunities? What did it bring to you to be able to play in Portugal, in France, maybe in other neighboring countries? How did it help you to develop your career?
Well, I think it's a good question because there's plenty factors that have a big role in it. First of all, I think development over Europe is important because we're Europeans, and I feel like globally, actually, we're human beings and we should be experiencing other cultures and being exposed to it. And as an artist, it's very gratifying to be able to share in front of different crowds and to connect with people in France. Or for me, since I have Portuguese roots, it was a bliss to be in Portugal and to be able to perform there. So it's about the exchange of culture. It's about music being universal, being something that can touch people without them necessarily understanding it. I created bonds in Portugal. I created bonds in places I never thought I would have met people, and I did, and that helped my career as well. Meeting people and sharing it, and I think traveling is very important, and it should be like, we should be rooting for everybody to get out of Belgium and to go everywhere and share what we're learning here. And we should be comparing how it's going everywhere else. And because we all have our problems and we all have our issues, but the more we talk, the more we communicate, the more we unite instead of like falling apart and separating and being like, oh no, Belgian artists only for Belgian. And you know, I think it's a beautiful thing that we have this opportunity. I hope they never take it away from us because, I love traveling, like I said, and I hope you guys are willing to keep doing all these type of panels to make sure it keeps happening, because in times like this, I think it's even more important to unite instead of separate. We have like a lot of bad shit going on, right? And so it's good to be supportive of something that spreads love and equality and connection.
Thank you. Julien, you work for an export office. Could you also explain us a little bit what kind of support the export office provide to the artists to tour in Europe, and how this support is complementary to the work which is done by the venues?
Right. Hello, everyone. So I'm here representing Wallonie-Bruxelles Musiques, but when we go abroad, we go often with our colleagues from now Poppunt. Before it was Kunstenpunt, and we have something called Belgium Booms that we do together to represent Belgium abroad. So that's for the promotion part of our work, is just representing Belgium and Belgium creativity. As Blu said, and as I read on some of the slides, and as a lot of you might have heard, of course it's important for everybody to go around in Europe and to go abroad, but in Belgium it's especially needed because we're such a small country, and actually we're just two small countries inside of one country. So whenever we did the first round, we need to go abroad, and this is where my company and the one of Nico here is useful to unlock new markets. So what we do mainly is providing opportunities for artists and their management, so everybody that work around the artist, to meet new people, to make new connections, to be present on new stages. like we do, all throughout the years. We have different sort of circuits that we do, like the main showcase festivals that some of you might know about, Eurosonic Reeperbahn, Mama in France, and there's a lot of them, and some other new smaller festivals that just arrived like in the past 4 or 5 years. I think like for the Ines network, which is putting together smaller festivals that are still showcase festivals that put together professionals from all over Europe and showcase new artists to those professionals. But so our work, it's a bit different what we do from how Flanders operate, but basically we have like tour support, we can help with promotion abroad, we can help for bands who want to go to those showcase festivals. Just one show, but it's a very important show because you will get to meet new professionals and make new connections, so we can also help them to just do this show. We also have something that helps, it's prospection, I think it's the right word. It's to help like managers that want to go abroad, like in something that somewhere where we wouldn't be. Like it's not something we're a partner of, but they would like to go and like talk to people at I don't know, Sonar in Spain, or to go to the UK where we're not really very present. So we basically help financially those artists, but we also help them with like creating networks around and bringing these networks back to Belgium so they can use them to advance their career. And I really love the fact that venues also now cooperate as European networks, because as we already said, it's super important to tour in your own country. This is where everything begins. But when we unlock new countries for the artists, it's important that they can rely on the venue networks of each of those countries. And so having all those networks getting together and having points of entrance through networks like Liveurope or Live DMA is for us very, very important.
Okay, thank you. So with this first part, I think we can understand that the challenges around the circulation of European artists, or the question of European circulation of artists in Europe, is not only about organizing concerts in different places in Europe. It's more complicated than that, because there's all these questions about giving visibility to the artists. So it's on the promotion, on the communication, also of putting on stage these emerging artists that maybe are unknown to the audience, but still we need an audience. So there's big challenges around this visibility, this promotion, this communication. There's of course the challenge of circulation, like the production, to be able to travel. And there's also the question of giving new skills, trainings to get this capacity to go on stage from the very beginning of your career. So the support has different facets. It's financial support, but it's also, as you said, networking support, or also the challenge of structuring the whole sector. That's the cooperation between the different stakeholders of this sector that enables the good circulation of this emerging artists in Europe. Do you have more questions on this at the moment, or should we continue maybe later? Yeah. Okay. Then I continue. My next question, goes to you, Olivier de Schutter. So, as maybe a future policymaker, why do you think it's important to support the emerging artists, in particular in Europe? Yeah, you have a mic.
Thank you. Very warm welcome to all. So first of all, I'd like to perhaps emphasize that one common misunderstanding is that providing financial support to programs such as the program that we have been discussing is a lost cost that is imposed on the collectivity in order to support artists who produce nothing. In fact, the studies we have show that when we invest in culture, the returns are very significant, and the returns are both economic and non-economic. There's a study published in 2010, I believe, by a professor from Solvay, from the Free University of Brussels, that evaluates that €1 invested in culture provides a return of 1.6 euro. But moreover, there is everything that Blu Samu mentioned, which is that culture is extremely important to improve mutual understanding, to promote values of solidarity and conviviality, to move beyond the work-centered society, and everything that the Greens historically have been promoting in terms of the kind of society they want to support would lead to give a greater role to culture. So for me, it's a very underestimated part of what Europe can provide, and Creative Europe is one example of such a program. But I think they certainly deserve to be better funded in the future. Although I do note, with gratefulness, that the support, the financial support given by the EU has been increasing over the years. But I think it's certainly important to continue and to strengthen this. In Belgium itself, I have to say that the budget going to culture has been gradually reduced, but more importantly, the administrative burdens imposed on artists have been systematically strengthened, and it has become more difficult in recent years for artists to even benefit from the status that they are meant to enjoy. So Europe could do many things besides funding, but I believe your first question was really about more the funding aspect, and this is what I would like to comment.
Yeah, okay. So on the funding, but also on the regularity part, sorry. And I saw the three of you nodding when you said so. Do you want to comment on it, or?
Yeah, well, I think Blu could comment way more than I could, but I'm working in an administration in culture, so I know about paperwork.
Yeah, we know that it's definitely hard as an artist to get any revenue from what you're doing. Obviously, it depends. If you sign with a major, of course, you won't be paying for anything. You will be getting a very small percentage of what you actually deserve. And then if you don't, then you choose to take all the administrative costs on your own boat. You choose to, thankfully, not just travel on your own cost, because there are instances like Julien that help you out to travel. But if aside from that, there's just so many costs to pay your DJ, transportations, hotels. Then it depends how much the venue is going to pay you. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. To get your artist status is very complicated as well. So there's instances that help, but I don't feel like there's enough for emerging artists that really teach you how to get through all of that and be able to be stable after it. I think we all go through these periods where it's very, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? And we don't really know where to reach out or where to go ask for help, or who can really tell us, hey, here for your artist, you can actually do it like this and this and this, and this will be easier for you, and then you'll get there faster. No, we don't talk about that enough. It's not, for me, it's not enough. But you have instances, luckily. It's not the worst place yet or anything. I feel very lucky that I've been surrounded with great people who could help me with it. But I just realized that it's possible that a lot of people who are beginning don't know about this or don't have the same opportunities, and then eventually may give up on something that's supposed to be beautiful because it's impossible to do and pay your rent at the end of the month, Yeah,
you want to?
May I ask, because this is a European venue and we have the benefit of people coming from different European countries, Belgium has a status for artists, which essentially consists in allowing artists, although they are formally self-employed individuals, to be treated as waged workers with respect to access to social protection. and to a certain extent, therefore, to be protected better than self-employed people would be. I believe the status could be significantly improved, in particular for the new entrants that do not necessarily benefit from the status that more established artists since a longer time have access to, and also because the time spent in training, right? Repeating. This is English, is it? Répétition, right? Yeah. To prepare for the show.
Yeah.
Rehearsal. Thank you. I was looking for the word. That this should be better taken into account. So there are improvements to be made, but in general, Belgium boasts a status for artists that is relatively better than in other countries. But how true is this? And do we have some comparative study trying to assess how different EU member states consider the artists with respect to particularly unemployment benefits, access to health insurance and social security more broadly? What is the situation of Belgium in this regard?
Yeah, I am not sure there's one European study about it.
Yeah. There probably should be, because it would be interesting to put pressure on governments to align themselves with the best example we have. I'm not sure Belgium is that one.
It's an idea to develop this kind of study. It's also another question to know if would it be a good idea to harmonize it at the European level or not. I know for sure that in many European countries there's no specific status for the artist, and I think among the sectors there's also this question about the entrepreneurship, the artist entrepreneur, which is a growing question, I guess, on the table, because the artist nowadays is not only performing on stage, but it is also maybe sometimes working, I don't know, for other projects which are not necessarily live or recording projects. So there's I think many questions behind this, but as far as I know, no dedicated study about that at the moment. No. Yeah, looking at the crowd, but no, I don't think so. Let's go back to our topic, maybe. And Geert, I wanted to ask you, because you're part of Liveurope, so you're part of one existing scheme to support the circulation of European artists in the music venues. In your opinion, what kind of additional support do the venues need to better support the emerging local artists and the European artists in the music venues?
Well, to start the Liveurope project, I don't know how many people know about it. Maybe make it very short, but it exists since almost 5 years. It is a lean and mean administrative project, which is really special for us. I have experience in doing or applying for European subsidies in other projects, which are almost nightmarish if you talk about administration. So Liveurope is none of that. It's really good. It's simple. We have, like I call it seed money. We have money to invest into programming emerging artists, which we without the money wouldn't have programmed, to be honest, in most of the cases. So that's the main thing about Liveurope. It consists of 15 venues in 15 different countries. So it's mostly spread all over Europe. But that's at the same time, I think when you're asking what more do we need more venues to participate in this venue, in this network, because we need to share tours. If you are in Barcelona having a venue, you want to book a Belgian band, it's very difficult to get them over there. It's possible, but it costs a lot of money. So you need other venues which are geographically more near you than Lille or Milan. So that's what the situation is. We just had a map of Liveurope. So I think we need an intensified network to grow from there. Of course, I was like half an hour ago, I was talking about adding like training or feedback, etc. Of course, we could need, we need money to do that. But I think the basis of the whole thing of touring artists, emerging artists, is to create a more intensively spread network around Europe.
Thank you. Julien, you're also part of a European network of export offices. How many are you? What are you doing? Can you also tell us a little bit more about it and how networking is important to develop?
Yeah. Well, we're about 25. It changed because people keep on coming. At some point, we will have all the European countries inside, and sometimes some countries like Belgium have 2 export offices
But
at the same.
there's an export office in all the European countries.
Not per se. I mean, in Belgium, we are lucky that it's very identified, so we know who the export office is. The European Music Exporters Exchange, that's the name of the association, has been built around like what we call proper export offices, which are like state-like, non-commercial entities. But in some countries, you have structures that are representing like right owners or private companies, and who try to act like they are the export office, which is a bit of a problem because then they are representing private interests. And we are trying to keep this European Music Exporters Exchange without any commercial interest. So that's what we do. And we have been talking and really talking a lot for like 3 years in between each other, just to know what we were going to do with this network. And now we have reached something that is, I think, really extremely interesting, because all the export offices, their job is to connect with each other's audience. So I'm bringing the Walloon and Brussels audience, Nico is bringing the Flemish, French, and every one of us is trying to reach all of everybody's audiences. And when we get together, not only can we access and unlock more countries, more networks, more knowledge, but also we can share our experiences, like what it is to be a small country just besides a huge market like France. Some other countries have to work like that, but with different markets. So there are a lot of good practices that we can try to exchange, and that we do exchange now. We really found something where we see each other at least 3 times a year. One at Eurosonic, one at Reeperbahn, and one in the middle. It was in Portugal a month and a half ago. Yeah. And we're also working on a preparatory action for the EU, and this is part of it has been really interesting, because we reply, each of us replied to a questionnaire with very detailed information on how we were managing our export strategies and how we were doing it basically in our own country. And when we got together in Portugal, we managed to exchange a few of those informations and working on what we could get out of the best practices of everyone. And what I think was really important and interesting in this meeting is that we realized that we were not competitors. One of my, I don't know if I will be able to tell it how it was, because she was saying it very well. She said that we're her class, okay? Everybody, each of the export offices is a part of the class. The artists in this class are competing against each other to become the cream. Yeah, that's an image. But yeah, we're together to stick together so that the artists can compete with each other. But we are not competitors. I'm not a competitor of the French export office. It's, even though we need to go on other markets, we need to just share experiences. And for the moment, it's really nice to see that when we are talking, we are not talking as we're not hiding secrets, or we're sharing experiences. We're sharing. We recently did. Like a fact findings mission to South Africa, the US and China, and it was really interesting to have all this information coming back and shared with the whole network, and it got even better with the benefit of everybody's experience adding to whatever was brought back from those countries. So it's basically just an experience sharing for now. It's mainly an experience sharing project, but I think it will become also I hope a major, somebody that the European Union can talk to and who have a really great experience of artist circulation in Europe.
Very interesting to hear. I think we've got the same experience among our network, Live DMA, that actually we often hear about a very liberal Europe where markets are in competition with each other, but actually when the Europe is funding projects, we can see that it's the cooperation and the partnership and the fact that working together and not being in competition with each other that actually makes us stronger to work at the European level. I think it's a very interesting idea. So I don't see any hands rising in the audience. Don't be shy if you want to ask a question or just comment. Otherwise, we'll continue together. About the perspectives on the European policies, I will come back to you to know you're a candidate for the parliament elections at the end of May. Why do you believe on this European level and on the European competence to support sectors such as the cultural sector or the music sector, for instance? Why do you feel like the European level is very important and is the relevant one to do so?
Well, I shall try to be elected, and if so, shall certainly support the cultural sector as much as possible. I believe in this, but I don't think it's the most relevant level. I think member states have an immensely important role to play, and that's also where most of the money still is for cultural life to be sufficiently well supported, and many choices are to be made at the national level. I do think the European level is pertinent, nevertheless, in two regards. First of all, we now have in some EU member states, let us face it, a very strong challenge facing artists in contexts that are more and more illiberal, in which cultural life, and that includes performing artists, are seen as subversive and as a threat to certain governments. And so I think the networks of solidarity that can support these artists are really important, and it is at European level that they can best be developed. I'm thinking of countries such as Poland, such as Hungary, to a certain extent Romania, where very serious problems occur that affect particularly journalists, but more generally affect artists, and I think that's something we should also keep in mind. Secondly, I do realize that some artists, once they acquire some degree of recognition, they travel across Europe, and when they are not EU citizens, it may be a problem for them, given the existing rules concerning the use of the Schengen visa. And in particular, there is a rule according to which if you have a Schengen visa for one country, awarded by one EU member state, you may travel, but no more than 90 days per period of 6 months. So in other terms, you have to interrupt your tour if you go beyond these 90 days, and then you have to return back to your member state for which you have obtained the visa, and then you have to wait for a few months, and then you can return touring, which I think is absurd. And I know that this rule is in now the Schengen visa code, the community code on visas of 2009. But I do think that for a profession, the very work of which is to travel, the rules should be relaxed. Now, this concerns, of course, third country nationals, right? Artists who are not EU citizens, but it is a very bizarre rule to apply to artists. So I think that we should really explore a revision of that rule in the future.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about your vision of culture in your own program for these elections? Would you, for instance, work in the Cultural Commission if you're elected at the Parliament? Or how do you think about crossing culture with maybe other topics at the European level. We had Susanne who did a presentation and explained that Creative Europe is the dedicated program for the cultural sector in Europe. But more and more, I think that the music sector also has transversal issues, maybe with urban planning and so on, with music venues in the cities being closer to the populations and so on. How do you see it in a policy program? Which importance do you give to culture in this program?
Well, most proposals from the Greens are proposals that are made at the national level, where most decisions have to be made that concern artists. At European level, however, there is one priority for us, which is to ensure that the internet giants, the Googles and Amazons and Facebooks contribute their fair share to public revenue, inter alia by allowing to remunerate artists better. And there is a big debate today on the ability for these large internet companies to choose where to pay their taxes, because of course their production of wealth is immaterial, right? So they declare their profits where they choose to declare them, very often in Ireland or in jurisdictions that impose very low taxes. And so there is now a proposal of the European Commission to have a 5% tax on the profits that these companies make. This is called the GAFA tax, on all companies who have a turnover of more than 750 million euros and make more than 40 million euros in Europe. And that would allow to remedy, which is now an odd situation in which these companies pay lower taxes, on average 9.5%, than other companies that on average pay 23.5%, because these other companies, they produce in a location where they are taxed, and it's much more difficult for them to shift profits around, if you wish. So that would be, I think, a good, an interesting development. And Belgium, we believe, should not wait for the GAFA tax to be adopted. There is now a political agreement, it seems, for this to enter into force, hopefully later, perhaps in 2020. But we should not wait, and we should immediately try to ensure that these companies are paying fair taxes, which could help finance inter alia programs in the field of culture.
Thank you. I have, I think, one last question for the three of you, but I think I can also address it to the people who are here today. It's basically, what are your expectations from the European policymakers? Susanne told us also that we're at a very specific moment, because there's really an opening about the dedicated European policies for the music sectors. So what would you push? What's your expectations, and what would you like to express and say? Because we said there's a structured dialogue in 10 days here in the AB, but I think it's important to collect as much as feedback as we can. So here is the open word. Maybe you want to start?
Okay. I guess what I would like from the European policymakers, I would like them to see emerging artists as what they are, which is future entrepreneurs, and we're also going to be part of the economy if you help us out. So, you know, and I would like programs to be built like where Julien works and like what you guys do, which is to support and educate the artists, to help us with traveling, which is super amazing that you guys do that. By the way, I would have never gotten to Portugal or to Holland without instances like VB, like without those instances. So I guess I would like more of that, and I would like, the support as an artist, as an entrepreneur. Though, so what I mean with that is, instances that will help you with the paperwork that you got to do, with how you're going to pay your taxes, because you also pay taxes as an artist. That helps you on an administrative level, because obviously if we started making music and started making art, that's not our strong point, you know. So I would like a lot more help there, and maybe to acknowledge us as what we are. And culture is super important, as you agreed with me. It's something that can touch everybody, that can help everybody, that can help us grow as a people. But also not forget that if you help us right, we could be a important economic revenue for you in the future that has places all over Europe, and not just importance in Belgium, but everywhere. And I guess that's what I'd like them to acknowledge.
Thank you. Julien, yeah?
Yeah, well, for me it's a bit hard to say, because we're actually working on several ideas that we're going to submit to the European Union. But I think from my point of view, which is largely uneducated on this high level of power, but I think it's on the right path, because what I see for the moment is that we have the realization that we're not, as I said, all competitors, and that Europe is not just a market where you can make money off of each other's or make money as a whole, but also it's a global market where we can share experience to be better in between each other, and also towards like the US or Asia or Africa or all the other markets that surround us. I think it's what I would like it to keep on pushing and building stuff, so that we're stronger at doing that, at sharing information, at sharing knowledge, at taking advantage of each other's market just to grow bigger, and not having like this competition above all mentality. I think this is one of the things that I would like to see implemented, and I think is being implemented in some ways at the moment.
Thank you. Geert, you want to say something?
Yeah, I don't want to sound too philosophical, but you mentioned the word diversity as one of the criteria usually mentioned for European funding. I think we're at the moment discussing this in Holland, and there's lots of political development which is against it, if you call it group politics or the identity politics. But I think there has to be like a counter movement, which isn't about like positive discrimination or whatever. It's about creating diversity, and more than that, creating the inclusivity within Europe, between artists and their audiences, within audiences. And I think supporting the development of new talents in the music business is one of the best ways to do that. We have, of course, a tradition of funding cinema, movies, etc., and it has been very effective, I think. But to take cultural funding to the next level, I think like the musical culture is the next thing to invest in, and mainly to have in mind what it can have, that it can have an effect on the inclusivity of European people.
Thank you. Is there someone here who would like to express expectations for the next EU policies? Yes, I see. I don't know if we have a mic for the... Yeah, cool. There's one behind you. Okay. Because if it's a live stream or whatever, we need a mic.
My name is Eileen, and I'm actually happy, Geert, that you touched upon equality and inclusion, because I was listening to this conversation and I was wondering where this all came into place. Like, are there any projects that will be supported that will also support people, across all minorities? I'm talking about women, LGBTQ community, people of color, people with disabilities. What is being done to, or are there any projects maybe in the future that will support that and that will ensure equality and inclusion within the music industry, within Europe? Of course, it's a diverse group of people when we talk about Europe, but I think that's also important. And on top of that, I'm also wondering if there are maybe any projects that will be supporting personal development of artists, because an artist is at the heart of the music industry. So are there any mental health support projects that will maybe be taken into place? And I think that's also really important to support and to take into consideration. It's not only about the career development or talent development or the business side of things, it's about the person. So I'm just questioning if that's something that's going to happen maybe in the future.
Thank you. I don't want to answer this because it's maybe not my role here, but I think that in the in the new cultural agenda at the European level, the notion of well-being is a very important keyword. And I think you're also right to mention inclusion. I don't know if you were meaning this diversity and inclusion for the professionals or for the artists or for the audience or for the three dimensions. But I also think that at least the gender equality is also definitely an important keyword and will be a kind of transversal criteria or whatever in the implementation of the next cultural and music programs. Yes, Susanne, you want to react, of course. Yeah, the mic is coming. If you can just wait 1 second. Thank you.
No, just to add on your very good and very right explanation, is of course priorities that you mentioned is priority in the program. It's a priority in the overall policy, cultural policy. But specifically coming back to your last point on the mental health, maybe watch out the calls that we will be launching most likely before the summer, because we want to focus indeed on the mental health aspects and on the health aspects, on the risks of artists with one call for tender. And because we hear that, we heard you today, and we hear that from many sides, that especially musicians and creators face particularly risks, are not aware, and we want to see how big the scope of the problem, because there are studies here and there, surveys here and there, so we have an idea there is something, there's a problem, but we don't know the size of the problem. We want to look into it. Looking at my colleague Fiona, who knows the the projects, all the projects by heart. We have over 80 projects running. I mean, it's not excluded, let's say it by that, and I think we cannot confirm if yes or no such a project exists. We have to look that. But don't hesitate to write to us. We can find that out. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I can tell you that between artists, we're talking more, and we're maybe not making a mental health program for everybody, but me and a bunch of artists in Brussels, we're meeting up once a month, and we're having coffee, and we're just talking about how it is and how hard it is. And for me, that's mental health. You know, it's helping each other. It's talking about your difficulties. It's talking about what needs to be better. And I think we're all consciously growing a lot, and I think that between artists, we're creating more support for each other, and I think if the other supports will come in as well, that it will help us a lot. But so, I don't know, you're already working in it, you're more than welcome to join us at our talks, and yeah, so until the lovely lady builds up her 80 programs to help you out.
So informal meetings, cooperation and networking, this is how it works, can be one conclusion for today. Is there one last comment from here or here before we conclusion? Expectations, wish, comments on the future of the European policies?
Well, my association with the remark is that I see music developing every day in our venue, and I see that music is becoming more and more engaged with these issues like mental health, emotions, gender identity, sexual identity. Artists are really being more and more open about it, and telling their own stories more and more, and and especially urban and popular music has I think a new face, and so music is becoming more and more also the content of those issues, and a carrier to develop, and I think that's really valuable.
Thank you. So to conclude, maybe we can say that supporting the music sector and the circulation of emerging artists in Europe, it's of course we're talking about fundings, we're talking about injecting or distributing some money and so on, and making laws easier for the professionals or even amateur to develop their path in this sector, but in the end, it's not supporting an industry for an industry. It's not only about the economical benefits or unlocking markets, as you said, but it's how we build some cooperation models, how we touch people, as you said. It's about meeting and sharing. It's about inclusion. It's about supporting the diversity and the freedom of expression, as you said, which I think it's also a growing issue, and not only in Eastern Europe. Unfortunately, I think we have several examples also in France or Spain. And this is why maybe culture needs to be one very important pillar of the next European period of programming, because it's a sector that carries values and that touch people, that touch all the citizens, and this is also why we're defending it. Thank you very much for your participation today. I hope we will continue this discussion, and I'm really looking forward for the next panels. So I will say see you later, and thank you.